Hello and welcome to Voices of the Valley. I'm Andrew Buckman.
I'm Joel Haas.
And in this episode, we will go through our normal headlines, and then we'll bring on esteemed guest Tyler Millen, a men's basketball reporter for the Daily Collegian. And then we'll close out with our usual team and player of the week.
Cool. All right. We can start with men's basketball. They suffered an overtime loss against Wisconsin. They were just unable to really overcome the deficit. Felt like they were trailing the whole game. They tried to close the gap multiple times, but just couldn't do it. So a disappointing loss there, but they bounced back with a big win over Illinois at home. So they complete the season sweep over Illinois.
Wrestling dominated Rutgers in Maryland. Yet again, they're just dominating everyone that they see and everyone that they come into contact with. That's Kayla Sanderson's way.
Women's lacrosse got the season started with a 16-6 win over Bucknell. Meanwhile, men's lacrosse dropped a close match to Villanova, so they fall to 1-1 on the season.
Women's basketball lost in overtime to Michigan State. They're in jeopardy of falling below 500 for the first time this year. Carolyn Keeger is already in the midst of her best season with Penn State by far, but tough stretch in Big Ten play.
Yeah. Both men's and women's hockey were on bye this week. Softball was set to play 5 games this past weekend, but all of them were canceled due to weather. So softball's going to get its season started this weekend, and that's the same with baseball as well.
Yep, and next up we'll have a guest. Let's welcome on men's basketball reporter Tyler Millen. Thank you for coming. Shake your hand.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Tyler. Last night, I guess it would be Tuesday night, just people know, Penn State dominated Illinois. Just talk us a little bit through that game. Jalen Pickett's performance was historic. Just talk us a little bit through that.
Yeah, I mean, first off, thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to come on here. But last night, I mean, Jalen Pickett, true masterclass by, the fifth-year senior. It's one of the better, college basketball performances, I've ever seen. I've been following college basketball basically my entire life. So that was one of the, just pure dominance. I mean, he was 20 plus points, 15 of 20 from the field, 5 3-pointers, which was, pushing his career high. I mean, he reached his 2000th, surpassed that 2000 career mark for points. It was the first 40-point game for a Penn State player since Gene Harris in 1961, and he broke, the Bryce Jordan Center record, which, I mean, it was just a purely dominant performance by Pickett. I mean, he was just crafty. He was coming around ball screens aggressively. They were drawing up new stuff. They were attacking Illinois' defense in different ways. And I think it really just set, Brad Underwood's, group by surprise because, a lot of those defenders were coming under screens and Pickett was just, just popping. And, he was draining from beyond the arc. But you could tell very early on that his confidence was high. He was attacking the rim. He was doing his typical, attacking basically anybody, smaller guards, even, bigger forwards. He was just going at him all game. So, I mean, he was just dominant all night. That's really the best way to describe it.
Yeah, just a really, really historic performance there.
Yeah.
That was a really awesome game to watch as a fan, just of basketball in general. But we are getting to that point in the season where, you're looking at the tournament, you're looking at the bracketology, you're starting to see, where each team is going to be seated. Penn State at one point was, I believe, supposed to make the tournament.
Yeah.
Now they've fallen out of pretty much every projection.
Yeah.
So just looking ahead to the postseason, how do you really see the team faring in both the Big Ten and NCAA tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, Penn State's, in their most crucial stretch of the season. I mean, you want to be playing your best basketball in, February and March. And heading into last night's matchup, Tuesday night's matchup with Illinois, 5 of the last 6 games are against quad 1 opponents, which is used for the NCAA's net metric, which is really instrumental in picking who and who does not make the NCAA tournament. So at 15-11 right now, Penn State has Minnesota and Ohio State as their next 2 games, both teams that are below them in the Big Ten standings. So they have to be able to take care of Minnesota on the road and then take care of Ohio State. That would put them at 17-11. In your last 3 games, you're looking at Rutgers, Northwestern, and Maryland. those teams are all quality teams, all pushing the top 25. Illinois was a team that had the third most receiving votes by the AP, by the Associated Press, in their top 25, right along with Northwestern, who was second. So you're looking at some teams that Penn State can really put together a quality stretch going into the Big Ten tournament. And going into the Big Ten tournament, they definitely have to win at least 1 or 2 games, depending on how they fare the last 5, to boost their resume and kind of negate, to an extent, their 1-7 road record. I think Penn State definitely has work that they need to do. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they make the tournament. Me and my close buddy always joke that the bubble is always closer than you think it is. There's always teams that win. There's always teams that lose. The bubble always moves. Greg Gard, after the overtime game, was joking. He's like, the bubble is just crazy because there's so many teams on it that it's got to burst at some point.
Right.
So Penn State, they have a chance.
So give us a definitive guess where currently right now, how far do you think they'll make it in the Big Ten tournament, and do you think they'll make it to the NCAA tournament?
It's honestly really tough. You never. Sports is a beautiful thing because you never know what's going to happen. But in the end of February and March is so crazy in college basketball that really anybody can beat anybody on any given night. You saw that in the tournament when St. Peter's at a 15 seed goes out and knocks off number 2 Kentucky, who
RIP to my bracket.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of guys had that same situation. So I think to kind of go back a little bit, I think Penn State can definitely make a run at the Big Ten tournament. I think they can probably win 2 or 3 games of the Big Ten tournament. Because if they're making shots, if they're executing on defense the way that Shrewsbury's kind of built the identity of the program. I think they can definitely make an impact. I think it's very possible that they make the NCAA tournament. I don't think Penn State fans, should be surprised.
Rebounding, and that's kind of been a big problem the entire season, as you said. And part of that is just not having a true developed center that is big and strong inside. They have Keba Jai, who's a 6'10" freshman. He's not there yet in terms of filling out his body. And then Mikey Henn he's big and strong, but he's not very tall. And so it makes it more difficult to rebound against guys like Zach Edey and Hunter Dickinson, even though they did a pretty good job with Hunter. But, what is your opinion on how in a short summary, how do they fix that this season? How do they address that problem?
They've kind of been doing it throughout the year. They've kind of been utilizing Miles Dredd to go against bigger guys, but I feel like the biggest thing for them is to have Keba just keep playing. He's a young guy. He's still learning how to play. I think personally he's got to add a couple pounds to his frame to be able to contend with, guys like you mentioned, Hunter Dickinson, Trace Jackson Davis. Zach Edey wasn't perfect his freshman year. Heck, he wasn't even perfect last year. Zach Edey's really coming to his own, and I'm not saying that Keba Jai is Zach Edey. Nobody's Zach Edey. But Keba Jai is a guy that's putting himself in the right positions on offense and defense. And you saw a little bit Tuesday night where he was aggressive defensively. He's smart in the pick and roll game. He's taking away both the shooter and the big man that's rolling. So, you have guys, and Mikey Henn is a veteran who's working through it. He's tough. He's boxing out. He's playing really physical in a conference that's really physical. And I think that if they kind of do what they did last night, whether it's all 5 guys crash the glass, they'll be able to not necessarily out rebound teams, but try to match up against some of these guys and prevent offensive rebounds. And if you're preventing teams from getting second chance opportunities, you're going to be able to get out in transition. You're going to be able to, and that's where they find success. In transition, dribble drive, pitch, pop out to funk, beyond the arc. You're going to be able to have success that way. Penn State's been their bread and butter all year. You try and match up defensively, and Shrewsbury has always, been very open that matchup problems are tough sometimes. There's no perfect world where you're going to be match up 5 guys against 5 guys, especially with some inexperienced bigs, guys that aren't as big as some of these other guys on other teams, so they're competing, and they're playing hard. So, they just got to keep working through it. I mean, Keba's a guy that's just got to keep getting playing time. It's the same with guys like Evan Mahaffey and Kanye Clary and Jameel Brown and Demetrius Lilly. Those 5 freshmen, that's your future, right? So you have to have those guys, be able to learn in these games so they can contribute down the road.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, really speaking about that, the freshmen there, I feel like they've sort of underperformed compared to expectations. I mean, they were highly touted as, the best recruiting class in Penn State basketball history. The team wouldn't stop talking about that. We saw that all over the place. And I feel like so far the team's mainly been led by its veterans, the fifth-year players.
Yep.
So what do you really think has been going wrong, I guess, with the freshmen? Or what can they do to sort of pick up the
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough, like you said. As a freshman, you're coming in. You got to learn a brand new system. And high school basketball is very much nothing like college basketball, especially, even for guys like Demetrius Lilly, big, physically imposing guy. He's got to learn how to play against some of these guys. Yeah. And the biggest way to learn is to make mistakes, is to, sometimes get beaten up by a guy like a Hunter Dickinson, or get beaten up by Zach Edey or Trace Jackson Davis, or some of these other big men that have been doing it for 2, 3, 4 years and have just been dominant in this conference. So I wouldn't really say the freshmen have been underperforming. I would say that because of the talent and the depth that they have on this roster, that it's tough for them to get playing time. But I would say that you're really starting to see guys like Kanye Clary start to come into their own. I mean, just watching Clary last night, in contrast to what he'd been doing earlier in the year, where it's, just drive, kick out, he's starting to drive, get all the way to the basket, have a nice little move at the basket, and finish. That's some of the stuff that you're going to see in terms of confidence that's going to build. And you saw Evan Mahaffey much, earlier in the year was playing with a ton of energy right off the bench, coming in and dominating on the defensive end, running the floor, getting open on the offensive end, cutting to the basket. Like, you saw a lot of that stuff, earlier in the year. It's kind of faded off a little bit, but, he's still playing hard, and he's still fighting for his playing time. And I think down the stretch, it's going to be tougher for some of those freshmen to play because they've never been in these big-time scenarios before where they're playing against a ranked opponent or playing in a big-time Big Ten game in a tough environment on the road. Some of these guys, they're going to learn that in this first year, and I think that's going to be super beneficial for them in their learning experience down the road.
What do you think Jalen Pickett's chances of winning the Wooden Award are? Because I know there's 2 guys in his conference that are incredible. I mean, Trace Jackson Davis and Zach Edey are maybe the 2 best players in the country right now, much less the Big Ten. So it's and then there's a guy like Jalen Pickett who's the only person averaging 17, 7, and 6 or whatever it is right now, and he drops 41, and he kills a team that's comfortably in the NCAA tournament. So what are Jalen Pickett's chances, just realistically?
I mean, I think he should be a first-team All-American. I mean, he's one of the best point guards in the country, if not the best point guard in the country. I mean, he's the only active Division I player with over 2,000 points, with over 600 career rebounds and over 700 assists. I mean, how unique is it to have a guy like that on your roster? I mean, it's pretty special. And just be able to see a guy like that most every night is pretty unique. So I think he's a top 15 player, if not top 10 player in the country. I just think his well-rounded play is what, I feel like he should be top 10 in the award, if not pushing the top 7, top 5. He might get docked, for playing for a program like Penn State that doesn't have the same pedigree and history like a Purdue, like an Indiana. But even you look at a guy, I know Alabama has a true freshman that's really come on, and he's averaging over 20 points a game. And, Alabama's, the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah.
They're mostly known for being a football program, much like Penn State.
Yep.
And Jalen Pickett is one of those guys that you watch and you can't take your eyes off, right? It's an unorthodox style. It's a bruiser down low. He's going to back you in. He's going to kick out, cut to the basket. He plays smart, and you got to be conscious as a defense of where he is, always. But I definitely think he should be given the respect he deserves.
Yeah, I definitely think Pickett makes Penn State a very dangerous tournament team. because I feel like we've seen in the past where a single player can kind of take
Oh,
over
yeah.
and just go on a, just a heater throughout the tournament and sort of carry a lower seeded team. We've seen it a few times. I mean, like Steph Curry, Kemba Walker come to mind as just examples.
I mean, growing up in
compare.
Connecticut, I mean, Kemba was, always my guy, right? Like,
Right.
And I remember watching that whole 2011, run where they won all the games Big Ten tournament. They went out in the NCAA tournament, they won the national championship. But like that was just such a special, unique run. And I think, Jalen Pickett has a lot of Kemba Walker in him. He's a guy that's crafty. He's a guy that's, that's going to beat you, in so many different ways, but you don't expect it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's just going to go out and he's going to do his thing, and he's going to get his. So yeah, I mean, like you said, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I mean, Jalen Pickett's definitely a guy that can carry a team. I mean, he showed that he can carry the team, last night, 41 points, in a night where Illinois scored 80-plus points. You score 80-plus points, you probably got a really good chance of winning the basketball game, and he just completely took over. So he's definitely a guy that's scary down the stretch.
Yeah. So do you want to go ahead and, on the record, predict Penn State to win the NCAA tournament this year?
I'm not going to go that far,
Okay.
but...
It sounds like you were going that far. You're comparing him to Kemba. I don't.
Yeah, I mean...
But it could happen.
If
right?
he plays like Kemba Walker, they got a shot.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say.
All right, and we were talking about Jalen Pickett being super gritty and stuff like that. So, I mean, obviously he's gritty. Would you consider yourself gritty or pretty?
Pretty, yeah. Gritty. I'm not so sure.
If you're
This
going
guy.
like percentages, like how much percentage of you is pretty compared to gritty? Like, is it a 75-25?
Yeah, we'll go 75-25. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say
Little
gritty. I got
disagreement
a lot more finesse, so I wouldn't.
okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, have you ever been blinded by Micah Shrewsbury's beautiful bald head? Like, has that ever happened?
No, that's
so there's
never
no
happened.
reflections. Okay.
No.
Well, I'm just thinking because there are Collegian photos like on the website on Blocks, which is our CMS for anyone who doesn't know, but there are some photos where there's like a reflection on James Franklin's head. And so I've always wondered if, like, seeing James Franklin close up, there's, like, a reflection or anything like that. But you're saying no for Micah Shrewsbury.
No, but I would take Shrewsbury's bald head over Franklin's.
That's honestly not a bad take.
Yeah.
I feel like that might be controversial because James Franklin is a bigger name, but
Yeah.
that's fair.
All right. Speaking of Micah Shrewsbury, we've seen some rumors. Obviously, he was rumored to the Notre Dame opening earlier. Do you anticipate him sticking around with Penn State for a while, or sort of is there a timeline there that you think is realistic?
mean, it's tough. It's a program that he's starting to, clearly build the culture. He's pushing it in a great direction. He's bringing in his guys that, that are going to play Micah Shrewsbury basketball. On the flip side of that, if a school like Notre Dame calls or a school with another opening, I think he would potentially at least entertain a call, at least entertain an interview. I feel like that he would have to do his due diligence and at least give the program that's calling the respect that they deserve. But I feel like Penn State should utilize their resources to keep him around. I feel like he's shown that he can take a program and win games and play Penn State basketball and just kind of embody, the values of the community, with guys that are, great student athletes, good in the classroom, good on the basketball floor. He's great with the media. He's great with, his family. He's, just building a great culture. So I feel like that while, it could be intriguing for him to potentially leave and, bring his son with him to, a potentially bigger program, I mean, I feel like he could definitely create something very, very special here at Penn State.
Cool. Why don't you give us one hot take to close this out? About Penn State men's basketball, of course.
They're going to win another game on the road.
That's pretty
tough.
hot.
That's pretty tough.
That's scorching.
That's
Yeah.
embarrassing, but it's true.
Hot take, I think Penn State gets to the Big Ten semifinals.
Okay. I mean, and realistically, that would probably put them in the NCAA.
If they take care
tournament.
of business the rest of the way, if they win their next 2 games, win one of the 3 against Rutgers, Northwestern, and Maryland, preferably one of the games on the road, their resume will push them with Big Ten wins right on the bubble. But sometimes leaving your fate in the hands of the committee is not the greatest thing. They've shown that they have left good teams out in the past. So you don't want to put yourself in that situation. You'd much rather have the certainty of just being right in.
Yeah. I mean, Penn State's just in such an interesting situation there where you don't even know if they're going to make the tournament. And then if they do, nobody wants to face Penn State. That's not a team that you can really feel comfortable going against.
Yeah.
But again, we don't know. They might be in the NIT, so we'll see how it goes. But
February, March basketball is always fun to watch, man. You never know what's going to happen. So I'm excited to see how it's going to play out the rest of the way.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on, Tyler. Really appreciate it. Continue the great work on the men's basketball beat.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, 1 sec. All right, that was Tyler Millen, longtime GOAT, men's basketball reporter for the Daily Collegian. It's great to have him on. So we'll do team and player of the week. Joel, if you want to kick it off.
Yeah, so our team of the week this week is going to be women's lacrosse. Mentioned it at the top of the show. They started off the season 1-0, 16-6 victory over Bucknell. Kristen O'Neill actually had 6 goals herself, so matched the entire Bucknell squad. They had a couple other players recording hat tricks too, so a really dominant start to the season.
Our player of the week is Jalen Pickett. Like we said when Tyler was on, 41 points, most in Bryce Jordan Center history. He's arguably the best guard in the country. But before we leave, some breaking news. Longtime Penn State field hockey coach Marette Curtis just retired, which is huge news. She is one of the most decorated coaches in the history of the sport, and arguably, she's, as we said last week with Sam, I think we all 3 had her in our top 5 coaches at Penn State, and so that's a huge deal.
Yeah, it was a really good season to go out on, too. What was it, Final Four?
Final Four.
Appearance in the NCAA Tournament, so that was awesome. Yeah, she's done a great job with the program.
Yep. But yeah, that's pretty much it. See you next week. We'll have another guest, hopefully a surprise guest, a big-time #1 guest of all time on Voice of the Valley. Sorry, Tyler. Not really. But yeah, subscribe, comment. See you next week.
Smash all the buttons. All of them.